how the Middle East will turn green. Okay, let's see some good news for the end.
What if the Middle East turned green? Right now, it is one of the hottest, driest places on Earth. But a bold new movement led by Saudi Arabia is trying to change that. One with a goal to plant tens of billions of trees, cool the land, and maybe, just maybe, reshape the climate of an entire region. But how is that even possible? Well, let's find out.
We are planting 6 million trees around the kingdom.
No such.
Fun fact, it was green once. Fun fact, a million years ago, when Earth consisted of one single continent, it was tropics. Freaking tropics. There was no rains, only a fog, and a really, really high humidity.
Effort has ever been undertaken before on such a large scale. The ambitions are big, the resources are big, and the results will be tremendous.
On March 27th, 2021, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman launched something unprecedented: the Saudi Green Initiative, a campaign to plant 10 billion trees across the country over the coming decades, transforming 748,000 square kilometers of land into green space, an area nearly the entire size of Turkey, while also placing 30% of the nation's land and sea under protection by 2030. And only a few months later, on October 25th, MBS and a collection of regional leaders launched the Middle East Green Initiative, an even larger alliance to plant 50 billion trees across the region, equivalent to restoring 2
I remember it was on the edge.
million square
Probably the last one.
kilometers of degraded land into green space, over 27% of the Middle East's total land area. Along with these initiatives, numerous other programs have been launched across the region, from afforestation in Jordan and Turkey, mangrove planting in the UAE, and green projects in Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and Oman, all with the goal of increasing green coverage. But why? In one of the hottest, driest, and most inhospitable regions on Earth, why are these countries spending so much money and attention trying to reverse that?
A brutal heat wave is scorching parts of West Asia, pushing temperatures to dangerous new extremes.
In June 2021,
frick.
a record-breaking heat wave hit the Middle East. Over the following months, temperatures soared, reaching 53.2 degrees Celsius in Al Nuwaysib, Kuwait, and over 50 degrees in much of the region. This extreme heat caused widespread hospitalizations, deaths, and grid failures, leaving millions without air conditioning. Water levels in the Euphrates and Tigris rivers fell dramatically. This, combined with the second worst drought in 40 years, caused widespread crop failures and livestock deaths that led to food insecurity for over 12 million people. As wells dried up, farmers in North...
Yeah, you know, the thing is really bad when the oil nation are occupied of global warming. Freak. They sell something that produce third of the total amount of dioxide of carbon in the world, and now they are occupied by the problem that basically is their bread and butter in some point.
Eastern Syria and Iraq abandoned lands. And across the region, violent protests broke out. This served as a stark reminder of the grave consequences of global warming and
Mr. President and second heat waves hit the Middle East.
climate change, of which the Middle East is disproportionately affected. The Middle East is warming almost twice as fast as the global average. Heat waves are getting worse and more frequent. Rivers like the Tigris and Euphrates are shrinking, aquifers are being depleted faster than they can recharge, and agricultural yields are declining. All of this risks triggering migration, unrest, and conflict, threatening to further destabilize a region that has already been strained by decades of conflict. As a result,
Yeah, they may fight this, but at the same time, well, they are not unite on it. Basically, they are agree with forestification, but they try to block the development of how we call them, reusable energy sources like solar panels and windmills. So that's something that they don't like. Because people will swap to that instead of their oil.
the Middle East is taking initiative to counter the impacts of climate change. Their green initiatives will help slow desert encroachment, improve soil quality, protect against floods and dust storms, and make cities more livable. In addition, planting more trees will absorb carbon dioxide, helping these nations offset emissions and fulfill their promises as defined in the 2015 Paris Agreement. But not only is increasing green space good for fighting climate change and improving livability, it's also part of a larger strategy to redefine these nations' role on the global stage.
If we want to leave the world a better place than we found it, we have to do something about it, and we have to do it now.
For the past half century, the Middle East's wealth has relied heavily on profits from oil. However, with limited proven reserves and rising global pressure to fight climate change and decarbonize, this prosperity won't last forever. Now, oil-dependent nations face a serious choice. Either quickly diversify their economies or be left in the dust when the world transitions to new, more sustainable energy sources. Most of these countries have selected the first choice, especially Saudi Arabia, with its Vision 2030 program to expand its tourism industry, invest in renewable energy and tech, establish smart cities, and set up logistics and manufacturing hubs. Expanding its green area is a critical part of this strategy. Saudi Arabia hopes to rebrand itself as a climate-responsible, forward-looking power, while supporting the tourism industry by making the nation's landscape greener and more attractive. In addition to expanding its green area, Saudi Arabia is investing in a
Yeah, it's true that the oil is not infinite, but it's still a lot of money, and there's some countries that are still, well, they wanna exploit it until the very end. For now on, if we continue to use the oil the same way we use it right now, it's gonna be, I don't know, 50 years before. Yeah, 50 years. After 50 years, with the same oil exploit we do right now, there's gonna be no more oil on Earth available. Well, no, at least for what we know right now. Mm. This is, but when oil runs out, how we will? Well, we build the same solar panels. Hmm. Well, big. That's, I guess, not a big deal actually. Well, solar panels are actually not really efficient. So we can produce a lot of them right now, but windmills are way better. Also, hydraulic stations are with turbines is the best choice right now. But It's really complicated with this. So solar panels are cool, but if we can't increase their efficiency, they don't really worth anything.
Emerging technologies, most notably AI. AI is
And the Chinese turbine blimps are promising as well. Yeah, that's true.
rapidly changing
Well, actually, well, it's not a secret. Actually, I guess you know it. The best energy source, clean, and that we can get in a huge amount is atomic energy. But people are, well, especially politicians, are so afraid of atomic energy that they try not to use it. But Chinese are making the new technology. I guess it's called Funtomaki or something like that. That uses. So basically, right now we're receiving energy from disintegrated atoms of uranium, but we want to make a reverse process that is producing much more energy, but this energy is way more complicated to control. They had success in running this type of machines for 0.7 seconds. But yeah. Yeah. Windmills are problematic as well, yeah. So probably in the future we're gonna see a lot of more atomic plants, in my opinion. Not in the regions where the seismic activity is really in danger, like Japan, Venezuela, Turkey. I don't think there is gonna be any atomic station right there. It's really dangerous. Just remember what happened in Fukushima in 2011.
the world, and fortunately, with today's sponsor, Aligner, you can be part of it while making money. Aligner is a platform where multidisciplinary experts help train the most advanced AI models in the world, providing the data these models rely on to think, reason, and respond effectively. And the best part, you get paid to do it. By helping train these models, experts can make up to $150 an hour. And even better, the work is remote and flexible. You choose the projects you want to contribute to and work on your own.
Well, that's two parts of the reason. But the main reason was an earthquake, of course. Well, tsunami. Anyway.
Schedule. So if you're an expert in a subject, check it out.
By that I mean that people in this kind of region really afraid that if something happened and somebody decided to make some economy on choosing the place to construct the anti-wave defense, for example, this is gonna be a disaster for them. Another one.
All you have to do is upload your resume, verify your ID, and go through a personalized AI interview. I did this all myself, and it was super simple. So to get started today, check out the link in the description or scan the QR code here. Thank you, Aligner, and now back to the video. So Saudi Arabia hopes to rebrand itself by planting more trees. But in one of the driest regions on Earth, where will all the water needed for these plants come from?
The birthplace of civilization is facing a grim reality.
The Middle East is incredibly water scarce. In many countries, renewable water resources amount to less than 100 cubic meters per person per year, compared to over 5,000 globally. As a result, to meet demand,
The thing is that Japan gets hit with tsunami constantly. What I say about Greece is because they were warned about the horrible placement of the station. They just decided to stick to the best spot they choose because money. That's true, but as far as I know, there was no proper anti-tsunami installation that are so there's exists this things that they do underwater. They install, let's say, a bunch of rocks that blocks tsunami. It's kind of more stable with that one. And the place where it was, there was no well, there was this installation, but they were bad or something like that. I can remember it very well. So yeah.
Saudi Arabia has invested billions of dollars in desalination.
I remember when I, in 2011, I was in school in Ukraine. There was somebody from Japan that came to our school just to explain what happened with Fukushima that day, or something like that. It's how they fought this disaster. I'm afraid. I still remember that.
Desalination plants, which now produce over 70% of the country's drinking water needs. It also aims to reuse 70% of its wastewater by 2030, up from only 21% today, which will supply green areas in cities, parks, and along highways. However, to support its goal of planting 10 billion trees across the country by 2030, it will need a lot more water. And the amount required depends entirely on the types of trees it plants. For example, planting 10 billion date palms would require 437 billion cubic meters of water a year. Supplying this through desalination would cost around $8 trillion, over 6 times the value of the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund. So what's the solution? Well, to realistically and sustainably reach its goal, Saudi Arabia must focus on native drought-tolerant plants like the acacia tortilis, which only need irrigation during the first 2 to 3 years of their life, after which they can survive entirely on their own. By focusing on these species in remote areas and reserving more water-intensive trees for cities or economic zones, Saudi Arabia can drastically reduce water requirements. In fact, planting 10 billion acacia trees in stages over a 40-year period would require only around $35 billion in new desalination capacity. Ambitious, but achievable. And while success will ultimately depend on long-term care and survival, planting is the first step, something that the kingdom has already made progress on.
Since the launch of the Saudi Green Initiative, nearly 100 million trees have been planted.
On March 29, 2025, Saudi Arabia's Minister of Environment, Water, and Agriculture announced that the Saudi Green Initiative has planted over 137 million trees and restored 3,100 square kilometers of degraded land, an area larger than the US state of Rhode Island in 20.
Like, you're telling me that the entirety of Tokyo has infrastructure that can deal somewhat efficiently with the earthquakes, but the companies that built the station neglected the defenses against something that happens constantly? Well, that was not a normal tsunami either. Though it was, how much? 8 degree, or how you call? 8-point tsunami or something like that year. So every tsunami that was before that was quite, well, nothing happened. But specifically this year, this tsunami destroyed the defenses.
Mm. 3% of its goal to plant 600 million trees by 2030. Currently, over 85 initiatives are active across the country, representing more than $186 billion in investment. One example is the Green Riyadh Project, an initiative to plant 7.5 million trees in the capital by 2030 increasing green coverage from 1.5 to 9%, reducing temperatures by up to 2 degrees Celsius and generating $19 billion in economic return. In addition, initiatives to plant 100 million mangrove trees along the coast, 100 million plants in Neo.
Okay, I searched out, it was even 9 points, which is insane.
100 million trees by Saudi Aramco, 60 million trees in forests, 45 million trees in mountain terraces, and many, many more have been launched. Saudi Arabia is taking its goals seriously. Still, 137 million trees is only a start, representing just over 1% of the entire initiative. To fulfill the larger goal, Saudi Arabia will need to be fueled not just by short-term hype, but by massive investment, long-term commitment, and sustained political will. If not, its goals risk becoming empty promises. Already, the Middle East Green Initiative is showing signs of trouble. No other country has committed to a specific number of trees, and little progress has been observed across the region. Still, if efforts continue to scale and Saudi Arabia remains committed, it could not only transform 35% of its land into green area, it could trigger a shift in the region's climate that begins greening even larger parts of the Arabian Peninsula.
Forests create a giant constant air current that attracts moisture from hundreds of miles away.
When a large amount of vegetation is
Fair enough, but the spot was considered bad even without the tsunami happening. It was considered that something like that, aka tsunami hitting even not a massive scale, could fuck up the station. So, okay, actually, what was the problem? It's not really the station, it's the generators, the reserve generators of the station. And they were overflowed with water that caused the energy energy output in the station. And because of the better, because the fact that this generation were in a bad spot and they were not really waterproof, let's say, that causes a disaster. And secondly, they have they could cool down the reactor by using seawater, but they haven't reacted quickly enough, so it overheated and exploded. Yeah.
Is planted in a region, it can change the local climate. Trees pull water from the ground and release it into the air, increasing local humidity. In addition, plants absorb more sunlight than the desert, heating up the surface. This increase in temperature results in convection currents that can pull moist air in from surrounding bodies of water, further increasing local humidity. This humidity then condenses into clouds, which can lead to rainfall and vegetation growth, forming a positive feedback loop that can gradually spread vegetation across a region. In fact, a shift in Earth's wobble and tilt between 15 and 5,000 years ago caused this exact feedback loop to unfold across northern Africa, transforming the Sahara Desert into a vast green savanna. But this effect isn't just limited to nature. Several academic models have found that large desert plantations in the Middle East could seriously alter the climate, with one paper simulating a roughly 100 by 100 kilometer long jatropha plant in Oman that resulted in a doubling of rainfall in the region. If Saudi Arabia is serious enough about its green initiative, it could potentially trigger a similar feedback loop. Planting 10 billion trees and transforming 1/3 of your country into green area is no small deal. If it can pull it off, it might alter the regional climate, pulling in more moisture and greening swaths of the Arabian Peninsula. And if it can pull off the even larger Middle East Green Initiative, we could see the wider Middle East turn green. Nevertheless, the consequences of climate change threaten to disrupt this entire vision. What do you think? A century ago, oil changed the Middle East. Could 50 billion trees change it again? It's a bold idea, but maybe, just maybe, it's possible. If you enjoyed this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you like, subscribe, and share this with someone who you think would find it fascinating. Also, if you want more desert to green stories, please check out my video on how the Sahara will turn green and Egypt's plan for a new Nile Delta here. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.